welcome back to Mustang Mentality. This is a project I started a couple years ago when I just found the need for more conversation, getting to know the members of our community better, and with great success. So I'm very excited to bring it back. And they reached out to me and they said, who would you like to start with? And you're the first person that came to mind.
I appreciate that.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
So I am Anthony Christopher. I am happily bringing back Mustang Mentality. And my first guest today, Damian Rico. Damian is with Hospice of the Calumet area, but I know him with the Munster Chamber of Commerce. So he is the chairman of the board. And so welcome.
Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and thanks for thinking about me.
Yeah,
this is really, really an honor.
Yeah, and it's you had me on your WJOB show a couple months back, and we talked about hospice.
Yes.
And so we got to learn more about each other on a deeper level.
Right.
I am a pretty easy person to reach. I put a lot out there, and I enjoy that. But part of my backstory that a lot of people don't know is the level that I've dealt with hospice with my grandma. So it was a nice thing to get out there and express my experience, and I was happy to do so.
Yes, and I think servant leaders, when you have that as the focal point of your life, you learn to really meet people where they're at, and it changes you, and it brings a whole new aura to your life, not only your business life but your personal life, because we're all broken people. And we're all great people. We all have greatness and brokenness in us. And I learned that early on, and had some great mentors. My parents were fantastic mentors. My grandparents were fantastic mentors, and met a lot of people along the way that helped my journey. And no matter who they are or how they are, I ran into a guy last week, and my son said, "Who's that, Dad?" And I said, "Well, he was the janitor at the Times, and I used to have lunch with him." And he'd say, "Mr. Rico, you're the only one that talks to me." And I was like, "But you're so interesting. I don't look at your profession. I don't look at your, we talk about things. We talk about life. We talk about East Chicago because we both grew up there. We just have this personal connection. And I think when you start looking at people and you start, giving them titles and we follow this all the time. We talk about this all the time. That doesn't define us. Whether we're a business leader or whether we're cleaning the streets or whether we're teachers, there's all greatness in all of us. And I think that's so important, is to look past, those little windows that people tend to look in.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And so again, I've known you as someone through the chamber over the last couple of years. I knew you were with hospice, but I didn't know, you have an extensive backstory and history as well. And so, I've enjoyed getting to know you these past few months as we co-chair the community engagement committee through the Munster Chamber of Commerce, and we're doing excellent things there. And so today, again, I like to focus on my guests. So I want people to get to know Damian as I have gotten to know you over just these short few months. So give us your background,
So my journey started in East Chicago, Indiana. I was born and raised in the harbor, and we loved East Chicago. It was such a special place to grow up. There was so much culture there in East Chicago, On our block, we had Greek, we had African Americans, we had any race you can think of. And so I grew up next to a Greek family that I called them Yaya and Papu, which is Grandma and Grandpa, and my aunt was across the street. And it was so amazing coming home and, just smelling the different, Serbian food. We have folks from England. It was just awesome. It was just a really great melting pot. And I guess I never really understood or appreciated that because I just was used to that. And it wasn't until I moved to Hessville, and then it was a different vibe. We were the only Hispanics on the block. They were calling us really bad names. And which was funny, Anthony, because I ran into one of the guys in the old neighborhood and at a funeral just about a year ago, and he apologized to me. He says, we didn't treat you guys really that well. And I says, that's water under the bridge. I said, we got to be good friends after a while, but it takes time and it takes a little bit of patience. You you always fear what you don't understand or what you don't know.
Sure.
And I remember coming home one time, and I told this story at a Munster Chamber event, and a couple of kids on the block were beating the heck out of my sister. You know, they had her on the floor, and she was just a couple of years younger than me, and they were hitting her and a couple of girls were on top of her, and I chased them. There was a big red wiffle ball bats, you remember those? And so I grabbed it and just started hitting everybody in sight. And I told my mom what happened. I said, I don't want any of those kids coming here, this and that. I was probably about 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
And next day I came off the bus, and who was at our house eating dinner was all those kids. And I was so upset. I was so mad. I looked at my mom like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
And so I went into the room and I told her, I said, how could you invite these people?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know, they learned hate and they can unlearn hate.
Mm.
They learn ignorance, they can unlearn ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, like, okay. So I sat down and and we were best pals after that.
Sure.
You know, you just learn. Life is a journey, and sometimes we all make mistakes and we all do things. And I think sometimes when you have people like my mom and my dad who are able to kind of walk us through that and say, listen, you know, you can either go through your life being angry and frustrated at these people and having a war, or you can make peace with them and, you know, share your cultures and you share your life with them. And like I said, they were our best friends, you know, growing up after that. But sometimes it's, you know, you have these little ebbs and flows in life.
Sure.
But that was a valuable lesson, I thought, that my mom taught us. And I just wasn't understanding at 8 years old, but I do now. I look back on it and I think, man, my whole life was full of those kind of learning moments.
Mm-hmm. I mean, especially at that age, you know, what a powerful lesson.
It was.
You know, instead of just growing up with that anger towards one another, it's, you know, the next day, let's break bread and you know, get through this together and see what we can do together.
Yes, for sure.
So, wow.
Okay.
So how long have you been with hospice?
So I've been in hospice. This is 9 years now.
Okay.
I'm going to be with hospice, and it's been a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
My journey started with hospice when I was at the Times. I wrote several articles about this fantastic organization that did some amazing things. And then my mom, she had cancer, and liver cancer, and we needed their service. Mm-hmm. And we were devastated. You know, my mom was only 69 years old, was the rock of our family. She was perfectly healthy, and all of a sudden this cancer came, and it really got her good, and it devastated our entire family. So we turned to hospice of the Calumet area, and that was the start of this hospice journey.
Sure.
I always knew and understood what they were, but I didn't really truly understand until they came. They comforted our family, not just my mom, but our entire family. And I thought, man, this is an awesome organization. And then a year later, my job opening came up, and you know, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, it was meant to be. It was funny because my job at the Times was eliminated, and our publisher said, "Don't worry, I'm going to find you something else in the Times organization," because he really liked me and I really liked him. But I just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I told my wife, "I'm going to take the whole week, and I'm going to sit in the basement." And I put myself in a state of grace, just prayed all day and every day, and very spiritual. And I just asked God to point me in the right direction. And one day she came downstairs out of nowhere. She goes, "What about hospice?" And I says, "You know, that's awesome. Thank you for that suggestion. But my friend, who's the marketing director now, he's been there 19 years, and he's the only position I would probably be qualified for."
Sure.
And she said, "Okay, I just thought I'd ask."
Yeah.
The next day, he calls me. He says, "Damian, I'm moving to South Bend, and I'm going to take another position." He was like, "I haven't even told our CEO yet, but I would like to give her your resume."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow. You know, it was God's intervention of where I should be.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we need to ask for that. Like, you know, what am I doing? How am I doing it? And am I doing it the right way? And I think sometimes when you listen and you become humbled, your direction is provided for you.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was, I gave her my resume, and you know, he had kind of joked. He's like, you know, sometimes she'll take a long time to call you, and okay. So the next day she called me. I think I was in 24 hours. I was in her office doing the interview.
Wow.
So Yeah, fantastic.
And I mean, obviously, I mean, you've done a great job since, right? Everyone knows what a strong reputation hospice has, and I can't speak highly enough about it. To touch on it a bit, I took care of my grandmother when she had dementia, and through I would say about 3 years of progression until she was, bedbound, needing 24-hour assistance, and for a long time, something happens and you go to the hospital, right? And you call 911 and you go through the whole thing. And I remember we were in the emergency room one day, and I just, I looked at her, didn't really know where she was, didn't know why we were there, but she had fainted at home. And I called, and we ended up in the emergency room, and I said, I can't do this to her anymore, And so that's when the doctor had said, well, have you thought about hospice? And for a long time, my perception of that was giving up. Right. If I make this call, dementia causes a lot of issues with a family too, right? And you can't hold them to blame. But when it first started out, me and my grandma didn't have the best relationship because she would say things and do things, and then it's hard.
It's very hard because they're not themselves.
It's hard to really separate what that's saying and what she's saying or what she wants to say and do. And I said, no matter how hard this gets, I promised her I promised her I wouldn't let her die. She'd always say, don't let me die, and don't make me leave my house. Okay. So that was a thing. And she had stints in and out of rehabilitation centers because she had her knee replaced and some things like that. But the goal in those settings was always, I need to come home. Right. And every time she would go in one of those settings, unfortunately, she would come out worse. Yes. So I told her doctor, I keep telling her, not yet. Like, if I give into hospice, then I felt like I was giving up on her, and I wasn't keeping my promise. And
there's a lot of people that feel that way. Yeah. And it's I think because we are built a certain way, and we have a way of thinking that might be a little different. And we're very curative in nature. We think about, like, how can we get better? How can grandma get better? And sometimes we have to understand that quality of life is the key. Like your grandmother wanted to come home. She wanted to be home. So what you did was very honorable. You honored her wishes. And other people, they don't understand that part. 95% of our patients are taken care of at home. People ask me that all the time. Is it hard to do what you do? And I said, no. I said, I think about myself. I would love to be an 85, 90-year-old man, surrounded by my loved ones at home, watching what I built and what I created. Yeah. There's not a lot of us that get to do that. There's accidents happen every day. I think about Kobe Bryant. I think about JFK Jr. These guys were young, and they were in accidents or crashes, and there's a lot of things that they missed. And what you did for your grandmother is fantastic, because you honored her wishes, and she was able to face those challenges exactly where she wanted to.
Yeah, and I'll let people know listening that it may be coming up to this kind of decision in their life. It was not an immediate, we went home and she passed in a week. We had hospice care probably close to a year. Wow. And because her body was still moving, but the mind, for sure. So, we could spend hours and hours talking about what Alzheimer's does to a person, but physically, there was really nothing that was going to do her in, but over time she became less mobile and things of that nature. But hospice was not you signed the papers on Monday and then she passed on Friday. It was a very long time. Yeah. And the level of care and the level of assistance progressed as the disease progressed. Right.
And there's a lot of people that don't understand that. There was a 6-month prognosis for a reason, but after 6 months, if a person has that disease that's not going away, you can get recertified. Yeah. And that happened to us. One of my dear friends, she called me about her mother, and she says, my mom wants nothing to do with hospice. And she said, will you meet with her and talk to her? And I said, okay. And so she said, I'm thinking palliative. I said, okay, I will. I said, but can I meet with her by herself? And she's like, sure. She goes, but me and my mom are real close, and I go, I know, but sometimes I think
Sure.
what she might tell me might
Yes.
be a little different than what she tells you.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, okay, I'm willing to try that.
Mm-hmm.
So after 2 hours of having a conversation, and it was just listening.
Yeah.
I didn't even speak.
Mm-hmm.
I just listened to her,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, okay, let me sign the paperwork. I'm ready for hospice.
Yeah.
And the daughter was amazed. She's like, what'd you say to her? I said, I really didn't say anything. I
Mm-hmm.
listened to her. I listened to all the things that she was worried about, all the things, all of her insecurities. And I just told her, we can help you with that. We have a staff and a team that can,
Yeah.
come in and work with you and manage all of these symptoms, all these things that you're worried about.
Mm-hmm.
And she was ready. And she was with us for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
We recertified her, almost 4 times,
Yeah.
basically. And,
Wow.
she recently passed in the last 6 months, but that was a great gift that she gave her family to be
Yeah.
here 2 years, and she didn't struggle. She was able to manage,
Good.
some of her symptoms because of the medications that she was on, and
Mm-hmm.
they sing our praises, and they're very uh, great donors to us, and they're
Yeah.
all very supportive of our Cherishing Life brand, and part of that reason is because they were touched by the service,
Sure.
and we were touched by her mother.
Right. And for the, do you call them patients?
Yes.
Patients. Okay.
Patients for palliative. We used to have the transition program. We call them clients, but now
Clients.
we're working on a certification for palliative, so they'll be patients.
Okay. So, I mean, hospice is excellent for the patients, but also for the patient support system
Yes.
as well. The volunteers, just to be able to go to the grocery store or something
Right.
and not worry about coming home to her, either leaving the house. At one point, I left the first business I opened up in Munster. I was where Bombers is now in the Harrison Ridge. That's where I opened up my first juice bar, and I was there for about a year. But as I was there, she started to progress worse and worse, and I moved in with her at that time, and I had to start adjusting my hours based on her with the sundown
Right.
symptoms and
Yes.
everything. And I remember one day I got a call, and I was working at the shop, that the police picked her up, and she was walking down Michigan City Road in Calumet City, and I said, they said, "What are you doing?" She saw. She saw a commercial for a mattress.
Oh.
Okay. And she said, "I'm sick and tired of my mattress." And she was going to walk to Macy's. She was going to walk to River Oaks Mall
Okay.
to buy a mattress. And so that, that's what you know who the president is, your name,
Yes.
what day it is. But the concept of reality is kind of diminished at that point. And just like nothing, she's
Right.
just going to walk to the mall because she wanted to buy a mattress that day. And so I said, okay, well, now you almost have to, adult-proof, child-proof, a house at that point. And it eventually got to the level where I left the business, took care of her for 3 years. And after she passed, ironically, like you went to work for hospice. We also had an in-home nurse that would come in.
Okay.
And so after my grandma passed, I actually went and I worked for the in-home health agency, because we had an in-home health agency and we had hospice, because they did different things at that time.
Okay.
And the level of care my grandma needed at the end was intense, and I actually certified. So I was a CNA, and I took the state certification, all that, because I was her caretaker, because she didn't like people that would come in the house. And I said, okay, well, I'll just do it myself, right? I'm here anyway. I can't really leave you. Might as well. I'll be, your official caretaker. And so that's what I did. And after her passing, it was a big compliment that they said, "We see the care that you give her. The house is always immaculate. Her bed, she's bed bound. Her the wounds are always, dressed properly, and she was well taken care of." And they offered me a job. Would you like to come care for other people? And I did it for a couple months. It really wasn't for me. It's one thing when it's your grandma. It's something else when it's.
It's hard. It's hard work, and it's
very.
It's very emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And I always give our nurses and our aides and our volunteers, it's really a challenge. And it's not for everybody, and it doesn't mean that you're not kind-hearted. It's just that, like you said, it's your grandmother. It's different. It's your mother that you're taking care of. It's different, but when you have to do that excruciating work every day, it could take an emotional toll on you.
And it was emotional too. And I mean, I would get frustrated walking into because I did in-home, right? And I got so frustrated walking into some people's houses, that, there they are in the other room and their mother, about to be a double amputee, is sitting in the diaper that I put her in 2 days ago.
Right.
And I remember one time I left the house and I called my supervisor and I said, I'm going to lose it on these people.
Yeah.
Like their neglect is, and well, they did it through the proper channels and everything. And I couldn't, that was it for me. I said, I couldn't do this. I don't have the restraint to just walk into a situation and just accept this and let it go into the system. Right. So I couldn't be around that.
Yeah, meeting people where they're at, it's really hard to do. And, we are all raised differently. And I think about that too, is like, how many blessings I had growing up because, my mom and my dad, we adored them. Mm-hmm. And I see sometimes where other folks, are very disrespectful to their parents or, but I realize everybody's raised differently. Everybody has a different relationship. Mm-hmm. Everybody's parent weren't as beautiful as my parents were to us.
Sure.
And you feel empathy for those folks. And my mom always said you have to really meet folks where they're at. That's putting life in perspective. I remember one of her final days at Rush, and I remember asking her, Mom, are you afraid? And she said, a little bit. She goes, it's just the unknown. Mm-hmm. She's like, but when I feel afraid, I think about those kids downstairs who are battling cancer, who might not ever see a husband or their children. Yeah. And she's like, I've seen all that. She goes, and I'm very proud of that. And I trust that God has my plan. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, here you are, and you're thinking about other folks.
Yeah.
But it's just how we were raised, it's how we were built. Mm-hmm. And not everybody has that. So when you go into those homes and you see that, it's hard for you because you empathize with people and you're a kind, compassionate soul. And it is very hard sometimes to say, how can you do that to your mom or how can you do that to your family members? But everybody doesn't have the same value systems that we do. Or, it's hard. It's very hard. Life is hard.
Yeah. Life is hard. Yeah, life is hard. But let's get into some of the easier side of life, right? So you're with hospice, but you're also, and how I know you're with the Munster Chamber of Commerce, right? And so let's switch gears a bit and talk about all the good things we have within the chamber going on right now. And so walk us through, now you're chairman. So this year you're the top dog at the chamber, but describe, your journey with the chamber. How long have you been a member? How long did it take you to work your way to chairman?
So Anthony, I've been part of the chamber for about 20 years, and I've always loved my experiences. You see different people come and go. Mm-hmm. There's other years I've been more active than others, but I think my gift is just bringing people together. Yeah. I love meeting folks. I love working with folks, and we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different styles. Mm-hmm. And I think as a coach, as a ball player, I've always learned that, the best teams are not necessarily the most talented, but the ones who learn how to work together.
Sure.
And I think that has been fantastic. And my son this year is now a freshman playing for Bishop Knoll, starting his career today, actually, his first game. But, and he says, Dad, I kind of miss you out there because, you have a certain way. I said, well, it's because you're used to my style, and I'm used to, he's a great player because not his athleticism, but he's a really coachable kid. Mm-hmm. And he comes and he asks, and I tell him, and but we have a really good relationship. And I told him, I said, the reason why we have a good relationship is because I respect you as a person, and you respect me as a person. Mm-hmm. And I'd rather have a stronger father-son relationship than a coach-player. Sure. And we've always valued that. I've always never took it for granted to sit there on third base and watch his whole career unfold. Mm-hmm. And it's just been a lot of fun. And I told my wife, it's funny because I love my dad. He coached, but he had a different style. Sure. His style was like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. And I appreciate it because, he held me accountable. But I thought, well, my style is going to be a little different. Sure. When you strike out, okay, that's not what I wanted to do. So why did you swing at that? Yeah, right. You already know he made a mistake, so you're not going to, emphasize that. We'll talk about it a day later when it's like, well, what happened there? Yeah. I just got fooled. Okay, just make an adjustment next time. because I think we all get knocked down, but it's how many times we really get up, right?
Sure.
And that's just like in the business world too, and we have a really good group of people that we work with.
Yeah.
There's a great vibe, including yours. You got a great energy that you bring to the Munster Chamber. I mean, we've got 20 new members in
Yeah.
the first quarter.
Yeah.
Or we're not even in the first quarter, finishing the first quarter
Right.
yet. But it's just a new energy. When you go talk to people, they want to be part of something great.
Yeah.
And you it's not one person that can make that happen.
No.
It's a collective group that sits there and talks about ideas, and not every idea is going to be adopted, but if you can
Right.
sit there and talk about it and say, listen, how do we do this? How do we become better?
Sure.
When you are accountable to yourself and to your groups, people want to be part of that.
Yeah.
They're not expecting you to do everything they say, but if you
Sure.
listen to folks, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And we're experiencing that, so it's fantastic. I'm 52 years old. You're a couple of decades younger than me.
Yeah.
But we're able to work together. I'm
yeah,
able to
yeah.
understand you,
Yep,
and you bring
yep.
a great energy to me. You bring a lot of things that I can see myself in you. Not just my name, because my middle name's Anthony. So,
Okay.
so is my son's name. But I mean, it's a great energy, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you look at me like, okay, he's older, he's a little bit, refined, and
Yeah.
I'm going to pick his brain for some
Right,
things, and
right.
we've done that.
Yep,
And I think
yep.
that's what you have to have in life. You have to respect people's differences, and you have to understand. And hey, I would like to incorporate this. I had a
Right.
great mentor. Louis Gonzalez was the Ivy Tech. He was the vice chancellor, and he was always cool and calm and relaxed. I never seen him get aggravated or frustrated. And I kept thinking to myself, like, how does he do that? And I asked him one time. I said, Lou, how come you're always so calm and cool and collective? And he says, do you really want to know? I said, yeah, I really do. And he says, well, I did this Catholic retreat that changed my life, and he said, I was going to talk to you about it because I want you to do it. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm Catholic, went to school all my life, but I don't know if I want to do a
Sure.
retreat,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
whole weekend retreat. He said, well, just think about it. So I thought about it, and two different times that I made excuses. And finally, the third time came, and I was supposed to do this retreat. It was supposed to be Thursday night, and I came home Tuesday from California on a conference. And I called him up, and I said, Lou, I said, I'm going to do the next one. I said, I can't do this one. I said, got home, I got a little bit of jet lag and this and that. I said, okay. He says, you're a praying guy, right? I go, yeah. He goes, okay, pray for our group this weekend. And he was like, you pray to God every day, don't you? I go, yeah, every day. I said, talk to him all the time. He goes, do you ever think he sits up there and says, no, man, I'm busy this weekend. I'm tired, man. I don't want to do it. And he said, just think about that. And he goes, and keep us in prayer. Man, I felt so bad, Anthony. I mean, and to this day, he doesn't even remember telling me that.
Yeah, it just
He
hits
doesn't
you.
even remember, but that's
Yeah.
what I needed to hear at that time.
Sure.
I called him back because I'll be there Thursday.
Wow.
And I did that retreat, and it really helped me to put things in perspective, because God's always there for us, and, it's how we call on him. And I think, that spiritual part of it is very, very important to how you live. And, compassion, having compassion and kindness for other people, it's so important.
Yeah.
And not that everybody's perfect. I mean, I got my philosophy too. If you don't have that nice to say, come over, sit over here next to me. You get caught up in that a little bit, and a little bit of fun banter. But, it's an accountability factor.
Sure.
And I think that has been a fantastic voyage. And, I've had some great mentors over the years. And, I really realized that, sometimes what we see on TV is, I've always loved Billy Joel. Since I was a little boy, I got my first Billy Joel records in 77, 78. It was The Stranger on 52nd Street. And I really learned to read on the back of those lyrics.
Oh,
reading
yeah.
Big
Wow.
Shot. And, how they used to put them on there. And so I always tease my friends, well, you guys learned on Sesame Street, I learned on 52nd Street. And I got to meet him. One of my dear friends has been playing with Billy Joel since 1989, and she's from Hammond and Gary, from this area. And the way I got to meet her is the former mayor that I used to work for in East Chicago, Mayor Pabay. He wanted to put a band together, and they hadn't had a band in East Chicago in 2 decades. And he says, I want the kids to learn how to play music. He goes, you can help me. I said, I don't play music. I don't. He was like, yeah, but you love music. I said, I do, but I don't know how to play. He goes, just get it done. And So I kept thinking, like, how can, and one of my dear friends, Tom Lewis, he passed away. He was an attorney in Gary. He always said he knew Crystal. And I said, I don't know. I'm going to call him. I'm going to hold him accountable. I said, Tom, do you really know Crystal Taliaferro? He goes, yeah. I go, man, I'm trying to get this band together, and this teacher's having a hard time getting these kids motivated. And, they're just not seeing it. I said, I need somebody like her to come in, talk to these kids, say, listen, I'm from the same street that you're from.
Yeah, right.
If I can do it, you can do it.
Yes.
And he said, fine, hold on, 1 second. Next thing you know, I was on a 3-way call with her. Introduced myself to her and told her my story. I said, it's Black History Month in February. I would love to bring you here. And she says, okay, fly me in, Southwest. She goes, I don't care, can you bring my daughter with me? Because I'd like her to be part of this. And she was probably like 10 years old at the time. So you got it. And we've been best friends ever since.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the first time meeting Billy through her, like my knees buckled, because it was like my hero. And, and after I got to see him work and what he puts on to that show and what he puts into that show, you appreciate him from a different perspective. He was no longer this guy you see on TV, but he was a hardworking person that this is what he did, and one of the things that I will always forget, I'll never forget him saying is that, even if I wasn't famous, I'd still be playing some music in some bar somewhere.
Yeah.
This is what I love to do. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And he has a great quote. If you don't love what you do, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
And that really hit me hard because he's right, exactly right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much you get paid for it. That's a small reward. But we chase things throughout our life that really don't matter.
Right.
We want better cars. We want bigger houses. We want better clothes. And at the end, it really doesn't matter. That stuff's all frivolous.
Right.
But how we impact other people, I think that's very, very important.
That's what lasts.
Yeah. And she came in, she talked to those students, and till this day, I think she's touched those people's souls. And she just told her story, and now she's touring the world, telling her story. And she was afraid to speak. She was a horrible public speaker. She said, "That's my worst part. I can play for 30,000 people, but speaking to a group of 10, I can't."
Yeah.
And so we worked together, and I helped her, and she helped me, and through the years we've had this great relationship. And now I'm honored to say that she's going to be a motivational speaker for this group, hopefully out of Australia, that's going to tour the world. And,
Oh, wow.
I just remember she couldn't even say a few words, and we just kind of helped her and talked to her, and did some videos with her, and kind of threw her in there, and she was just a great student. And it's like, wow, this is pretty amazing that you get to share talents with people that you never think about.
And that's what we're trying to do now, right? The big focus for us at the Chamber is telling stories.
Yes.
We started this Member Monday. We're starting to highlight those businesses that sometimes, they can't come to us, right? They can't make the lunch. I'm in the position I am today because I'm no longer at my business. When I started at the Chamber of Top Tier Nutrition, I wasn't able to make the lunches. I couldn't be sitting down right now with you. I'd be behind the counter. So my focus coming on with that, decade plus background is how can we bring people to the businesses, and how can we help tell their stories? Someone reached out to me last week or maybe the week before, and they said, what's the point of the Chamber of Commerce, or what do they do?
Yeah.
And they said, oh, well, I heard this, or I heard that, or this chamber does this different. And I said, listen, I'll give you my honest opinion. For a very long time, the Munster Chamber of Commerce nailed business-to-business networking.
Yeah.
Munster has been very good. We have a lot of big businesses, a lot of great people that volunteer their time, and they were very, very good at business-to-business. But what I found lacking, and why I pushed to get involved, was the business-to-consumer.
Yep.
Right? So business to business, like now I'm in real estate, right? I can talk to these other business owners. Maybe they have a property to sell or a business to acquire, business to business.
Right.
But not business, when I was, selling smoothies, the business to consumer. How can I sell more, health shakes and things of that nature? Well, you really can't just by going to a lunch.
Right.
So now our focus is we're not forgetting about our larger companies and our business to business, but we're aggressively targeting the business to consumer. Why should the independent person, the owner operator, join the Munster Chamber? Because our focus is you.
Right.
Our focus is growing your brand, making people see you, and help making those connections.
What I think we're thinking more strategically about impact,
Yeah.
how we impact business, how we
Yeah.
impact the community, how we impact education, because these young people are our next leaders.
Right.
And if you're not constantly measuring those three things, you're really selling yourself short, because that's really what builds communities.
Sure.
And there's different ways of doing it, and I think a lot of it has to do with like the time of it. Not everybody can come to a lunch.
Right.
So we have like coffee hours in the morning, so people can come before work. We have things after hours now
Right.
that people can come to. We do stuff at lunchtime for those folks that can come
Yep.
to it. So I think we have an eclectic group.
Yeah.
We're really thinking about impacting everybody. When I first started with these coffee hours, it was Munster. We had our own
Right.
coffee hour. I belonged to the Highland Griffith, so I go to their coffee hour. I go to the Cherville. Now we're doing coffee hours with 4 or 5 collective groups.
Yeah,
Lansing,
which is awesome.
Cherville.
Yeah.
We also just invited Lakeshore, which is Hammond. So if we bring all these people together, instead of going to 4 or 5 coffee hours a month, which I can't,
Right,
I
you
can't
can't
really
do it all.
justify
Yeah.
that. I can't say hey hospice, I'm leaving again to go
Yeah.
to a different.
Yeah.
We have one a month,
Right.
and we bring 60 to 70 folks there.
Yep.
For instead of just
Sure.
10 different coffee hours or 5 to 10.
Right.
So,
Right.
and then you get to learn about what other communities are doing too.
Yes.
And you show them respect by saying, okay, you're having your event going on in August, so we're going to do ours in September or October.
Right.
You learn, and you learn to work with each other. That's
Yeah.
really collaboration.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to collaborate, because sometimes we look at our communities like little gangs.
Yeah.
Like, this is my territory.
Yeah.
This is your territory. And you're not really going to get anywhere if you think like that.
No.
And I think the
No.
biggest part is just getting people together, because we have more similarities than we do differences.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love about this group is always thinking about how do we do it better, how do we make more of an impact, and how do we understand businesses and what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, collaboration with neighboring municipalities and communities, it only helps us at the same time. The better Lansing is, the better Munster is. The better Hammond is, the better Munster is.
Right.
We need to focus on the growth that we see within our neighbors, and not put up walls everywhere.
Right, and that's so important, because you're trying to make connections.
Yeah.
And without getting political or anything, we're struggling. We're in a time of deep healing. We
Yeah.
need some healing going
Yeah.
on in the world, and it's because everybody's pointing out differences as opposed to
Yeah, of course.
similarities. Working together is so important.
Yeah.
You can't just coin somebody and say, oh, this person's this or this person's that.
Yeah.
No, we are human beings. And if we are great humanitarians, it doesn't really matter what we come from.
Yep.
Or where we come from. It's about how we put our differences aside, work together, and have a better impact on the world.
I've never been in a productive environment where we announce what political party we belong to when we walk in.
No.
It's you and I and whoever else in the room, and we're collaborating and working towards the same goal, right? We're working towards building the community, bettering each other's lives, bettering the lives of our neighbors. The stuff doesn't get brought up. But
Right.
if you let yourself get sucked into those
Yeah.
vacuums, they're just full of hate.
Right, it is, and that's very important, because when I worked for the city of Chicago, I remember a friend of mine. It was Mike Pence that came in, Governor Pence.
Sure.
He came into one of the businesses, and I was able to meet him and walk him through the business. And one of my friends said, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What are you talking about? He's the governor,
Right.
of the United States of America.
Right.
He's a governor here in Indiana."
Right.
And the guy he was really bad mouthing him. I said, "Listen, do you know him?" No. He came here to visit your company and listen to what you might not agree with him ideologically.
Sure.
And that's fine. I don't agree with my wife every single day.
Right, sure.
And she
We'll
doesn't
edit
agree with
that out.
me.
We'll edit
right?
that, right.
I mean, that's just part of your life, but you love them because collectively and collaboratively, that's what makes it great to
Yeah.
have a good relationship.
Yeah.
To sit down and talk through things. It's easy to love somebody when things are going right all the time, but
Right.
it's not when you have two different perspectives and sit down and talk to them and say, well, this is what I'm thinking, this is what you're thinking, and
Right.
how do we find that
Right.
middle ground?
Well, I mean, with the Munster chamber, last year we had Governor Braun,
Yes.
right? And it was met with, backlash by some people. It's like, why? Why wouldn't you embrace the fact that Munster is gaining that kind of traction, that we can attract the governor to our small
Yes.
town? Northwest Indiana is on fire.
Right.
And it should be an honor. Yeah, you don't have to agree with his
No.
philosophies, his principles, but I mean, if we weren't doing things right, then he wouldn't have been here.
Right.
So I think that was a huge achievement that, for some political reason, some people just decided to get angry about.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and that's the neat thing about it, too. It was funny because I remember as a young person when Barack Obama, when he announced that he was going to be running for president, and he was just the senator then, and I went to go see him at Union Station down in Chicago, and he gave this speech, and all these young people, they were like my age. I was in my 20s at the time, and they're like, "Wasn't he awesome? Wasn't that the greatest speech you ever heard?" I go, "Not really." I said, I didn't understand what he was trying to say. He talked about civil rights, talked about Jackie Robinson. These are all great points. But I was really waiting for him to really lay out his platform.
Sure.
And to really talk about these things. That was one of his very first speeches.
Okay.
And he made a huge, awesome adaptation because he learned, like, okay, I gotta. So somebody must have told him that too. Like, okay, you gotta be a little bit more, because he just kept building momentum and gaining momentum.
Yeah.
And when I heard him on TV maybe months later, it was a lot different than when I saw him 3 months ago. And I really respected him because, like, here's a guy that was out there, probably thought, I can do it. I can talk to these people.
Sure.
And somebody probably told him, like, no, listen, you got to be a little bit better at laying out your plan, because these people are going to ask you some tough questions.
Sure.
And he was a different person back then. And I think we all evolved. We all can be better. We all have to figure out, like, okay, how can I do this a little bit better?
Yeah.
And it's really amazing. Bill Clinton was amazing because he came when the Obamas and the Clintons were going at it for this. Indiana was really, really important to win that state at that time. And Bill Clinton came in there, and he was really smooth. He gave a speech for Hillary, endorsing her. And I remember this African American lady. She's like, "I just want to meet Bill," and the security guard said, "No, nobody's gonna meet him." Where he gave his speech. Well, he overheard it. He goes, "Who wants to meet me?" And she's like, "Right here, I love you." And he goes, "Okay, baby girl, come on, let her through." I mean, it was so, like, genuine, and so, like, and she came through and she took his picture, and he goes, "Thank you," and I mean, it was just real. And people have those connections with folks, and you're born in Arkansas, you know who these people are. They're the backbone of the country, and no matter what party affiliation you are, there's greatness and there's vulnerabilities in all of us. Every candidate has. Whoever makes that better connection with the American people usually are the ones who win. Yeah. And
I've never met someone or listened to an at-length speech of someone that I agreed with 100% politically.
Yes.
But it's who do I agree with the most, and who do I more so resonate? Who do I feel instead of hear sometimes? It's
I always value people on who I feel like is more of a servant leader.
Sure.
Who is more aligned with my values. Yeah. And that little D or R or independent behind it, that doesn't really matter. No. If somebody is that person that it's going to lead the country, then that's the person that I'm going to go with. Yeah.
And that's, circling back, right? Like, we have a unique and dynamic board within the Chamber of Commerce. None of us, we don't apply for the chamber when we put DNR. We don't. It doesn't get brought up. It wouldn't be productive, No. So it's how can we serve the community? What can we do? and we all come from different aspects of
Yes.
life, and I like how, a couple of our board members, we have, someone from the Parks Department, we have the clerk treasurer, we have the superintendent of the school. So municipally, we're plugged in.
Right.
We have a couple doctors, we have an attorney.
And that, and Anthony, that was strategic, because I think back in the old days, it was like a popularity contest. Like
Sure.
Whoever wanted to be on the board. Now we're thinking about it more strategically. What do we need on this board
Right.
to take it from here to here?
Yeah.
And a perfect example is we didn't have an attorney, and so we put Mr. Wilk on the board,
Yep.
because he's a really wonderful person.
Yeah.
And we're using his services because we are now trying to get our 501c3,
Right.
which is very, very important for us.
Right.
As far as making philanthropic decisions, and picking his brain and talking to him, and he even said, "This is a great challenge."
Yeah.
I enjoy that you guys are thinking this way. But we knew strategically, okay, this is what we want to do. Let's get him on the board.
Right.
Let's get a banker on the board because we need some help with finances.
Right.
You've been a great addition to the board because you're just out in the community and you have a passion for people.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. We need those fire starters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate it, and I love getting involved. Sometimes I'm in the room and I go, I'm the least qualified person to be here. We went with the Civics Club a couple of weeks ago, and it was a member of the Parks and School Board. It was the superintendent, the clerk treasurer, and then me. So they're all giving their spiels, and it was like little old me, but I just appreciate so much the opportunity, because you can,
Yes.
hopefully I show for other people, right? Like I was a straight C student, at St. Anne's and Marian Catholic. Like I did my stuff, but I got on by, working since I was 14 years old, and worked my way through most of high school and
Right.
in college. I went to 2 years of school and I dropped out. I went to Purdue Cal for 2 years, dropped out to start taking care of my grandmother's business at the time. And, my father died. We talked about this on your episode. My father died when I was 8. I did not have a good childhood growing up. I did not have a good, sense of a well-balanced family
Right.
growing up. But I can do it. So the
Well, a lot
most
of
proud I am of showing other people
Yeah.
you can do it.
And a lot of people, they define education differently than I do. It's not the education you have. It's what you do with that education.
Sure.
You could be the straight A student, but if you can't communicate with somebody about a business plan or a goal or a vision that you have, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And sometimes that C student who works hard to get people to notice what they're doing, they're going to work the hardest.
Yeah.
Sometimes
You have to,
And I tell
yeah.
this to I tell this to my son all the time. I would rather take a kid that works hard on the baseball field than a kid that it comes easy to him.
Sure.
Because you're not going to put in the work. But that kid that is hungry and determined to play and to make that varsity team, they're going to work hard. And guess what? Everybody else around them is going to notice, and they're going to work hard.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, "Man, that kid's working hard." And I will always remember this story when I read this book called The Winner Within by Pat Riley, and he said that when he was with the Lakers, he was like a low-level coach, assistant coach, and they wanted to get all these prestigious coaches in, and they were going to try to talk to these folks and convince them to come to Los Angeles, because at that time nobody wanted the job. And he says, I remember picking in my head and saying, if nobody wants this job, I'll take it and I'll be good at it. And they all kind of chuckled, they laughed, and he goes, I'm serious. And I don't know how, he said, I don't know how they gave me the job because I wasn't qualified for it. But he's Pat Riley, and he came to the Lakers, and you get Magic Johnson and Kareem. Of course, it's a great team, but for a coach to come in and just get all these kids, all these young people to collaborate and to play basketball together, and he's one of the greatest coaches, one of the greatest basketball masterminds the world's ever known.
Yeah.
But if he didn't peek his head in there, who knows what he would have done? And I think to myself all the same thing about like guys like Billy Joel. These guys are all from inner cities like ours. If I'm sure teachers told him, "You're a waste of time."
Yeah.
I'm sure Billy Joel probably didn't get straight A's.
Sure.
Well,
Well, Michael Jordan got cut from high school,
yes.
right?
I mean, our world is filled with all these great success stories where
Yeah.
people are determined to do what they want to do to pursue their dreams.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this world a great place.
Sure.
It's awesome. There's so many. I mean, look at Sylvester Stallone. Got kicked out of every high school you can imagine, but he wrote Rocky in 3 days.
Yeah.
And they offered him $300,000 back in 1977. That was a lot of money.
Yeah. Right.
But he didn't want to take the 300,000. He wanted to be Rocky.
Yeah.
And even though they said no, you're not. You're an unknown name. He took a chance.
Yep.
And look at him today. I mean, it's just story after story he's written and developed, and those 3 franchises with Rambo, Rocky, and The Expendables are billion-dollar masterpieces.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever done that.
Yeah.
And it's just because he took the time to say, I'm going to invest in myself. I already know what it's like to be broke.
Sure.
Right? That's not going to bother me.
Sometimes it's there's no fear of it because you've already been down there. Being in business and things like that. I've told people, like, what if you lose it all? What if? I said, it doesn't bother me.
No.
I have zero fear of losing everything in business because I'll do it again.
Yeah.
There's
billionaires out there. At the end of the day, at the end of their life, they're going to look back and say, yeah, I made all that money, but what did I really do? How did I impact this world? What did I provide? There's a lot of them that are philanthropic.
Sure.
But there's a lot of them that are going to second guess themselves.
Yeah.
And I worry about, you get to that next level in heaven, God's going to look at you and say, what did you do
Sure.
for my people? What did you do? How did you invest your time and your energy on earth to make an impact? And, he's not going to be asking about to see your financial statement.
Sure, right.
He's going to be asking, hopefully he's asking you, and he's going to know. And I tell people all the time, all these questions that we have, we think we want the answers to, it's not going to matter one day. You're going to go and you're going to be like, oh, this is what it's about. This is what life's about.
Yeah.
And, it's just all relative.
Yeah. Well, this is, what the show's all about, right? It's we touch on some topics, but it's more so letting the community get to know people, getting to know your neighbors, getting to know your community leaders. And that's something I consider you a community leader.
Well, thank you.
So I'm glad we've gotten to know you more today. I like to end them all with kind of a call of action. So in regards to the chamber, let's focus on that. How can someone get involved? What's step one? And the chamber, it's good to know that you don't have to have a business. We have community organizations, we have churches that are members, we have groups and clubs that are members. I don't know if we have just an individual that wants to join for the sake of it, but maybe we do. But how can someone get involved?
I would just call us, the Munster Chamber website, munsterchamber.org. All of our numbers are on there, our emails. You can sign up. If anybody wants to reach out, they can reach out to me or you.
Sure, of course,
I'm sure all of our information is going to be out there, and we'd just love to sit down with you and hear what you're thinking about, because we'll find a way to make things work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of partnerships that I think occur when you can sit down with somebody and say, I really want to be part of this chamber. I really want to have an impact. How do I do that? Sometimes you need to have your hand held a little bit, and you need to get that little encouragement by some people that have been there, seen that, and we're ready to do that. We're primed for success, so we're really looking to grow our group, and I think this is a great time.
Yeah.
So reach out to us.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I'm excited to start doing this again. Like I said, I did it for a year, and it was I did one a week, and it got kind of overwhelming. And then, life happens, right? And I took, it's been about a year and a half since I did an episode. And, but there was demand for it, right? I got approached by some people that wanted to, start their own kind of Munster recap. And possibly a podcast, and they reached out to me and they said, we'd like you to be the host of this show that we're going to do. And I said, well, I've got a show already. It's kind of collecting dust at the moment.
Okay.
If you guys want to take it on, I don't have the time to do the production and the behind the scenes stuff, but I'm happy to contribute in any way I can. And I'm happy to work with guests that I enjoy talking with and bringing their faces to the community. So I think over the next couple of weeks and months, we're going to kind of roll this out. And I think it's going to be a great collaboration. And I'm excited to hear more stories of our neighbors.
Good.
So yeah,
Awesome. Well,
thanks
congratulations
for joining.
and good luck to you.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
going to be really great.
All right.